Back to the Pretty Awkward Entrepreneur podcast. I'm so excited to have and welcome our guest today, Lindsay Dollinger, a business coach and podcaster to the Pretty Awkward Entrepreneur. Welcome, Lindsay. Happy to have you here.
I am so excited, Megan. Thank you so much. I can't wait.
Yeah. And Lindsay and I connected actually in a podcast group, a course that we both joined to grow our podcast, led by Keisha Fitzgerald. Shout out Keisha. It was an awesome course. And we're like, let's do a podcast swap. I got to be on Lindsay's podcast, which I know she'll talk about. And it was such a great interview and we had so much fun. And I just really love your perspective, how you run your business, how you're juggling it also with your full-time job. And so I really wanted to have you on for one of these awkward time interview series, just to share your story and give some insight into what it's really been taking to get to the level that you're at in business. So, usually as most podcasts do, we like to start with the typical, tell us about yourself, and you can go back as far as you want, but really just about your business journey and kind of what got you started and what got you here.
Awesome. Well, I could say all those things about you. And I know I shared with you when we chatted before, but I have listened to your podcast, what seems like forever to me.
I love it.
I'm a longtime listener of the show.
Makes us happy.
But like you said, my name is Lindsay Dollinger. I live in Ohio. I am a full-time high school Spanish teacher, like you mentioned, and also am a business coach in all of the other hours, and podcaster. And how I really got started with that was 2015. My mom passed away from breast cancer. We were really close, I have a really close family. And it was just a really awful year. I mean, it makes sense that it would be a really awful year anyway, but it was, the lowest that I had ever been. And I was like, I have got to do something for me. I've got to do something to pull me out of this. And so I joined a network marketing company, which I was always anti-network marketing, like all the things, the bad things that you hear about it. But it was one for health and fitness. And I was going back to the gym, and that was where I was finding kind of like my happy spot, was, exercising again and that good energy and being around the women at the gym. And so it just so happened that the woman who owned the gym was also a coach for this company. So I ended up joining her, quickly fell in love with it, started seeing massive success when I was doing what I was told to do. But I also found not only doing what I was told to do, but putting my own like spin and twist on it, where it felt really good to me, because I never wanted to come across salesy, spammy, all those negative words that lots of times get, put together with network marketing.
Yeah.
And so I started seeing success really quickly then when I started putting my own twist on it and doing things, my sort of way. So I ended up transitioning out of that company. Well, it's a very long story, but they changed their policies and procedures. It overlapped with something else I was doing, so I had to switch. And I joined another company and quickly found that success again. So I got to the less than 1% of the company. And as I was doing this, I fell in love with podcasts, the personal development world, all of those pieces. And I realized what I really, really loved about being in network marketing was how I was able to help other women build their businesses and teaching things like the social media, productivity, how to do this while also working full time. Because I got that question so much, like, how are you able to do all these things? You travel with your students, you work full time, plus you're leading this team and you're helping others have success. How do you fit it all in? And so it was kind of like a light bulb moment where I was like, I could do these things that I'm seeing these other women do. I could start a podcast. I could start coaching people not on my team. So it was a really organic transition into coaching. I'm still in network marketing, but I don't build a team anymore. I don't promote it or anything like that. It's more like an affiliate sort of deal. And also to kind of stay up on the trends in the field. But my focus now has been the business coaching and the podcasting. And I love it. There's always a new challenge. And I still feel like I'm helping women so much with their businesses. And so it's been really fulfilling.
I love that. And so many people get started in network marketing. I did as well. It's very common. A lot of people I've interviewed have had a very similar story. And I think it's because network marketing is a great place to start. You don't need a product. You can get to learn marketing without having to create all that stuff, So And I love that you said like you did it your own way. And I think it's probably, it makes sense like why you branched out, because you had success and people trusted you. And if you're only doing it the way maybe the company teaches, it's not going to necessarily be applicable outside of the company. You know, it's like, can anyone apply that strategy? So it's really cool that you kind of developed your own and you're like, this is working for me. I think this can work for people outside of this company too. And I know for me, when I like branched out, we have very similar stories. Actually, I just felt like a whole new world was open to me. I felt so restricted, you know, like only being able to coach people in the company. And I was like, I love them and I believe in what I'm doing, but it wasn't the passion anymore. And I felt like there's so much more potential and I'm like restricted just to do this. Did you feel that at all when you were in network
100%.
marketing?
Well, and that, I guess that was the part that I should have added is I also wanted something that was my own, that because I'm like, I'm already working my quote unquote 9 to 5 where I have my own rules and, you know, working for an employer. And it almost felt that way as well with my network marketing company was, you know, there were, like you said, restrictions on who I could coach and who I could charge and what I could do and what I could post and things like that. And I was like, I would just really love to be able to help whoever I wanted to help or whoever wanted me to help them and do my own thing and have that kind of like that control over it, because that's the whole point of being a business anyway, right? Is like that flexibility and not being able to limit yourself. Whereas, you know, with a company, they're going to pay you whatever, you know, 25% or whatever your comp plan looks like. Whereas my own thing, I could charge whatever I wanted and I could work whenever I wanted.
Exactly. So, and that's what people don't understand. A lot of times in network marketing, they get into it like, I'm an independent contractor and it sounds very cool. And like they're their own boss. And yes, of course they make most of the decisions, but they don't decide what products are released. They don't decide the comp plan. They don't decide so much of that. And that's what I realized pretty quick. I was like, oh, I don't actually own this. Like the company could technically go under tomorrow. Most likely no, very slim chance, but what happens? And it was one of those wake up calls. Like this is my only, for me at the time, my only stream of income. That really scared me. And I was like, I need something else. So yeah.
Well, and companies do go under. And the other part is like, you have no control really over like your team. And such a big part of your paycheck is that team. And so I'm like, I would really love control over like, I know what I put into this, I'm going to get out of it, regardless of having to rely on other people to do that sort of thing for me was really, really appealing.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm so with you. I'm so with you. Like people pay you for a service and if they don't show up, they don't show up. You still get paid for the work you did versus like hoping that they show up. So you get paid. It's just like really, it can be kind of awkward. I mean, there's many pros to network marketing. I am not hating on it at all, but you saw the light as well. I was like, there's just so much more potential. And I think it's just smart to have multiple streams of income. Same. I'm still a distributor. I still make money from it because I spent a long time building it up and treat it more like an affiliate, you know, and I'm very grateful for that, but it's just like one avenue of income, which is pretty cool. Yeah.
And I think that, I was going to say, I think that was a big thing for me too, is that guilt of like, do I stay a distributor, even though I'm not 100% all in? But like you said, I spent years of blood, sweat, and tears building that up. I'm like, I deserve to still be able to, you know, reap the benefits of that still to this day. So if that is you and you were listening, do not feel bad about that.
Oh yeah. I never do. I get so excited every week when I see that direct deposit. I'm like, yes, that was for many years of, like you said, blood, sweat, and tears. And I do use the products personally still. So it's a win-win in that sense. So something I think is really unique about what you're doing is you are still full-time in your job, in a pretty demanding job, I would say, you know, in education. And so I'm sure you get asked this a lot, but I'm sure this is what you work on with your clients. But what's been like the biggest, I don't want to say struggle, I guess, challenge in being full-time as a teacher, and then also pretty much being full-time in your business, having a full-time business, having a full roster of clients, making a great income, like that in itself is a full-time job. So how do you kind of balance those two things? Hope that's not too vague of a question.
No, it's fine. So first of all, a couple challenges, and this might not pertain to everyone depending on what your field is, but for teaching, we are pretty restricted on, you know, the sort of presence we can put out there. So like my social media, I have to walk a thin line between like what I share, you know, for example, I could never post a picture of me drinking wine. Like you can't post alcohol pictures. I can't technically post during work hours, so now I schedule posts and I have a social media manager who does stuff. But I have had parents before turn me in for being on social media while I'm at work, even though I wasn't, because stuff was scheduled to post. So
Yeah.
it's a really
Wow.
fine line when you're trying to build this public image of
Yeah.
yourself as almost like a different identity than the
Yeah.
one that for part of your life you are actually living, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
that part has been difficult. I'm doing a little bit better at it.
Mhm.
Especially since I have shifted how I introduce myself to people
Mm.
as I'm a business coach and podcaster. And then it's almost like I'm treating the teaching as the side extra
Mm.
thing. That mindset shift for me has helped a ton versus I'm a high school Spanish teacher and also a business coach. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
was really important for me to do because it took a
Yeah.
long time to do that. Because otherwise, it's almost like when you talk to women who are doing, two network marketing businesses, for example, and you're you're never going to really
Yeah.
have success at both of them until you pick which one is kind of your priority. So as far as balancing it all, it comes down to really, really careful time management
I'm
on,
sure.
on my part. So I was actually just looking before we hopped on here and going through my Calendly with my one-on-ones and making sure for my own podcast interviews. So for example, my podcast, I do interviews with guests on Tuesday afternoons. And so I know that that's kind of my blocked out set period of time. I do no more than one guest a week. And so then it's done. I get my podcast edited that day and then I'm done. But I also on Tuesdays don't do client calls, other things like that. So making sure to kind of almost theme day, sort of, but just making sure that I am looking ahead, blocking out, but also giving myself those periods of like I mentioned to you before we hopped on here, I was just at Disney World. So those periods of quote unquote rest, even though I was running a marathon, so it wasn't really rest, but time away from, one or both of the things that I'm involved in has been really, really helpful as well.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And it's funny because my husband's kind of experiencing this right now where he's kind of navigating different career paths, helping us in the business, really stepping in as more of a CEO role actually. And noticing that the busier he is, the more things he has on his calendar, the more productive he is, the more he gets stuff done. And when he has all the time in the world, it's did you get to that thing yet? And it's you kind of feel oh, you have some, and I know a lot of people who go full time in their business and they'll have a full-time job and their business and be crushing it. And then they go full time and they're I have so much time and I feel like I'm less productive now. And so I think there's some benefit to running both at the same time because you have to learn how to be time managed. You have to learn how to not waste time. You can't just be scrolling forever because those are valuable hours that you could be using to move the needle forward, or serving your clients and stuff like that. So I'm sure in that sense, it can be stressful for you, but it sounds like it's also something that's really created a lot of good discipline for yourself too.
Oh, 100%. And it also, I love teaching. So just teaching in general, whether it's teaching the Spanish or teaching my clients business tips. So I think once I realized that and that the business coaching really almost filled up my cup, whereas some days when I came home from school, I would just be drained. So I know that I have my business to look forward to. So that's always, kind of a highlight to push me through that. But what you were saying about your husband was, I was smiling because when I have summers off, that's totally me.
Yeah.
Oh, I can work my business full time now. And then I'm I don't know if I know how to work my business full time because I'm so used to having to do stuff, at certain times. So that discipline really comes up a lot for me in the summer when I'm okay, you gotta treat this and do this like a business, like you do the rest of the year. And really use this time. And that's the other thing, using the time that I do have, fully into my advantage. Otherwise it's, it's just kind of a waste.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy what you'll do with the time you have. There's a phrase, I'm going to butcher it, but it's you can get done in a certain amount of time. There's, oh gosh,
yeah,
I'm totally
I know what you mean.
Yeah. You can give yourself an hour or give yourself 4 hours and you'll get it done in an hour. And obviously that's not true for everything, but I remember when what was actually at the height of my Beachbody career and we were on it. My husband and I just got married and we were on a cross country road trip for our honeymoon and we wanted to explore, see all these cities. We took our time. We took 3 weeks to drive from New York to California. or actually to Las Vegas and then California. And we stopped in all these cities and wanted to really explore and not have to work a ton. And so I worked when we were driving, and he drove the whole time pretty much. And so I would connect to my hotspot and work. And some days it was 4 hours. Occasionally we'd have a really long travel day, but not really, because we wanted to stop and see so many cities.
Wow.
So it was like 4 hours max. I had one of my best months ever in the company that month. And I swear it's because like I had less time to mess around. It was like, you got to get it done and then you're done. And it was like such a light bulb. I was like, wow, these things that were taking me so much time took me half the time. Wow, that's interesting. And it's because I wasn't distracted. I had a real zoned in, and obviously everyone works differently. It depends on your personality. It depends on just how you operate, right? Everyone operates differently as far as how much they can put in time-wise and time blocking. But it was just pretty wild. And it just made me think of your situation kind of,
Yeah. Well,
so I think it's really, oh no, go for it.
Well, I was going to say, once you know what you have to do in your business, like obviously you had been a coach for a while at that point, and we know what to do. It's just the doing it part, right?
Yeah.
It's just staying focused and making sure that we get done all that stuff, and we can guarantee you get done a lot more in that amount of time than we usually.
Oh yeah. Totally. I think it's so cool that you're on this podcast too, because there's so many times that I interview people and they quit their jobs right away, or they are like, all I want is full-time business or bust. And I've actually worked with quite a few people who either didn't quit their jobs because they want the security and of the income while they're building to the place that they want to, or they actually like their jobs and they're like, I'm not in this to quit this. Like, I didn't join because I hate what I'm doing, which is like a lot of times the narrative you hear. It's more so I just found this other passion and I love both. So I'm curious if that's your situation, and kind of, have you had anyone go, why haven't you quit yet? Stuff like that. I'm sure you get that question a lot.
Oh yeah, I do. I get that question a lot. And it's so funny too, because, like I kind of mentioned with my social media, I don't post much about teaching anymore.
Yeah.
And so I will get like former teachers of mine who will be on my social, and they'll be like, I really wish you were still teaching. And I'm like, I am. I'm just not talking about it. I'm doing it on the fly. But no, I do. I love teaching. And that's the thing. Now I will say the past couple years since the pandemic, it's been a whole new world teaching. And
I'm sure.
I don't know if I were a new teacher right now, if I would have that same loyalty as, having the 10 years pre-COVID under my belt, where I'm like, this is what it could really be, so I can't say that for everyone right now starting, but I can't complain. I am in a good district. I love my coworkers. I have great benefits, and I love my kids. I take my students on trips abroad in the summers.
That's so cool.
I have a lot more gray hairs because of it, but I think, you can make impact in lots of different ways in your life. And do I know if I will be there forever, until I retire? No, I don't know that for sure. But, I'm content where I'm at. And I do feel like there is still a place and a purpose for me to be there. So I'm not in a hurry to, quit that to solely do my business. And I think, like you said, that's really important for people to know that, like, it doesn't have to be either or, because you do hear so many times, like, quitting to do this, or once you hit this amount, it's time. And, I don't know what that number will be for me. I've thought about it a lot and I've played around with it. But for right now, it's working. So I'm content to do both until I don't have the time to, or, I get burnt out of doing it.
Yeah. I think it's so refreshing to have that perspective, because it really, you hear this narrative that's like, this is the only way. And I get the whole, like, not having a plan B in order to really drive yourself. I actually think that mentality works really well for most people. But if you love what you do and it's almost supporting your business in a way, like you're honing your teaching skills, all of that, like you said, until the time where you're like, I can't do both, why not?
Right.
I'm telling you firsthand, health insurance for when you're self-employed it's not fun. We're experiencing that right now. It's a headache. I will say that for sure. But there's a lot of perks. And like you said, you love what you do. You didn't get into business because you were like, I need an exit strategy. This is horrible. Like that's different. And I see this a lot, especially in beginner programs, where people, like, they take a leap of faith. And again, everyone's different. Some people I've worked with, that leap of faith it gives them a kick in the butt that makes them like really take off in their business. And then I see the opposite, where that leap of faith is like so much stress for them. And they show up with that desperation when selling, because they literally have to pay their mortgage or their rent or whatever it is. And I'm like, who told you had to quit to be considered a real business owner? Like, that's not how it is. Like, you can do both, and it's just finding which personality type are you. Personally, I could not quit until I replaced my income, because I know for me, I would be a stress ball. I'd be like all the pressure, and even then, like, I probably could have made a little bit more before I quit. I was doing background work on film and television and cocktail waitressing. So it wasn't a traditional job to quit. So it wasn't as big of a deal. It was like not a career for sure, it was jobs. But even that, I was like, am I ready? All that stuff. So I just think it's so refreshing that you're like, I love both and you can do both, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. And, well, and like we already said it, but it's just, I think so important for women to know that, because I have worked with people too, who have quit either before they were ready to, or almost put their own pressure on themselves. Like, I have to get to this certain financial amount, quickly in order to be able to quit. And I'm like, unless you're in a really bad situation, I don't know that that's right for everyone, because that stress, like, that stress can affect you in lots of ways in your business. And I would rather you showing up like calm and not with that desperation, and really showing up as aligned to you than like you said, like a stressed out person.
Yeah, there's no timeline that you have to do things by. Like, I think it's good to have some semblance of a timeline. Otherwise, you'll just kind of show up when you feel like it and not really treat it like a business. But there's this unwritten like rule that you have to do things in a certain amount of time. And it's like, what if it took you 2 years versus the one that everyone else says it should? Did you fail? No, you probably did it with more sanity and you actually built something sustainable, like, I've seen it. I'm doing a workshop in a few weeks. Well, by the time this comes out, I'm not sure. It might already have been done. But I'm doing a workshop, and a huge thing is like speaking to people who've had a lot of success in business, but who honestly have burnt out because they almost had it too quickly and they scaled in a way where they weren't ready. And they were like, I can't keep this up. And they almost feel like they're reinventing themselves. I've definitely experienced that in 2020, 2021. So it's very common.
Yeah. That's actually attributed a little bit to me switching to the business coaching from the network marketing was that burnout. Like, just, the resetting every month of, you're back to zero, your team's back at zero. And it was just like, almost like a constant cycle of like pushing every month. Whereas I really love with coaching how I'm able to, plan launches or workshops or different things like that strategically where it fits for me, with my full-time teaching schedule or with taking kids abroad or things like that. Whereas before I was like, in Europe and I'm like, I've got to hit quotas. Like, I've got to be messaging people. And I'm like, this isn't the type of freedom that I really, really wanted either. So that was another perk of kind of making that pivot over to coaching.
That makes a lot of sense. Exactly. We can go through seasons. You can have a season where you have a really structured, profitable launch that floats you for a long time. And then you can go chill for a few months. Like, that's amazing. And you can plan that around teaching. So I love that. One thing we love to do with these awkward time interviews is not just focus on like all the great and all the success. That's amazing. But I'm sure you had some moments when you were building, especially with all of the twists and turns you've experienced, that you were like, I don't know if I'm meant to do this. I don't know if this is for me. I might quit. Like, what were some of those really pivotal moments that you almost gave up?
Oh gosh, there are so many. I mean, like, I feel like when everyone probably answers this, they're like, oh my gosh, there's so many.
Most people I talk to are like, at least once a week, I want to burn it to the ground. I never do, but at least once a week.
So one of them with one of the network marketing companies that I was with, I had built it up a pretty large team, a huge customer following, and, the company vibe just kind of switched. And I did actually end up leaving that company, eventually, but it was just like months of like getting on these calls and like the vibe wasn't there. And I went to the convention and it just like felt icky. And I'm like, is this for me? But I'm also bringing in really good money. Like, should I give this up? And like, that whole struggle with, is this worth it? Or is it more worth it to like, I don't want to say keep my morals, because they didn't make me obviously do anything that I didn't want to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like because your
Mm-hmm.
name is tied to those company, like you are
Totally.
supporting them. And so that was probably my first one, was just like dealing with that struggle of like, do I stay, do I go? But I've also built up something really big and like this, being scared to leave that.
Yeah.
And the other one, more on a personal level, that totally hit me like a lot harder, was I lost some friends, doing business. And
Mm-hmm.
sadly, I know that's a narrative that, a lot of my clients have had as well, where, you know that you would support people in a certain way, and we almost expect others to treat us that same way back.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had to learn that is not that is not always the case. But I had a friend who I remember sitting on her couch, and she was my best friend at the time. And I remember sitting on her couch and I was so excited to share, like I had just learned about the Facebook algorithm, and, it was so cool. And so when I made these posts that were asking people their favorite running shoes and all these people were commenting on it, I was like, it's so cool, because then when I post something again, my stuff's more likely to show up in their feed. So it's like helping the algorithm. And from that day on, she has not commented on a single post that I have made.
Mm-hmm.
And she just immediately stopped. And I was like, why is she not supporting me? And then I actually had an event. She offered to sponsor at her house, like an open house. And I overheard her telling people like not to buy things because like something was not good quality or something. And I was just, I remember getting in my car after that, and she didn't know that I heard her, and calling
Mm-hmm.
my parents. And I was just so upset. I was like, why
Yeah.
would she have offered to do this when she clearly didn't like the stuff, or, it was just almost felt like sabotaging of
Mm-hmm.
my business in that point. And I mean, there are other things obviously with that friendship that ended up happening.
Yeah.
But that was like the real big catalyst for me, that like, okay, not everyone is going to support you. And
Mm-hmm.
you've got to really love your business, like know your why, know your purpose, know your heart and what's behind it, in order to be able to keep going, whether the closest people to you are going to support you or not. Like, because it's going to
Mm-hmm.
happen, whether it's
Yeah.
friends, family. I've had some family members, similar things, like they would buy from anyone else in the world, but they would not buy that exact same product from me. And I'm like, why?
Mm.
Like, what? And it's a hard thing to grasp. It's a hard,
Yeah.
thing to go through, but
Oh
that was
yeah.
probably my most like traumatic.
I think that's like something we don't talk about that enough, but like the things that you gain, if we talk about what the things you gain in entrepreneurship all the time, but we don't talk a lot about what you can lose. And a lot of times you do lose, like you said, friendships, or you lose versions of friendships or family and things like that. And it's a lot of times I notice, because you're growing, you guys are just growing differently, right? You're growing in this way, they're growing in that way. Not that one is better than the other. It's just, you're just becoming different people. And if you met today, would you be friends? I've definitely had that. I've had a few friendships that have kind of dissipated because of that. I've been very lucky in a sense that a good core group of my friends, specifically from high school and my college friends, they don't necessarily understand what I do or really get it, but they're like, you go do it all day long if it makes you happy. You know what I mean? Like they
Yeah.
don't comment on posts. They don't support me in that way, which I
Right.
personally I don't care or don't need, but it's just like they support. They're like, as long as you're happy, you go rock it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I notice if people are doing like what you said, it's sometimes from not understanding, like not getting it, or like maybe sometimes a jealousy of like, I want to go after something, or nervous. Like a lot of times it's projection, right? Of like what they're feeling.
Mhm.
But it's just something that I've realized that so many people experience, and they're almost experiencing it in silence. So I'm really glad that you said that, because it's like, what did I do wrong? Am I a bad friend? It's like, if you are going to get into business, you're going to change and you're going to grow. And that's good. That's not a bad thing. Like change is a good thing. And I remember getting an email from a friend, and she literally said, I feel like you've changed. And I was like, yeah, I have.
Hopefully.
I'm really good. And it's funny because I look back even to my other friends who aren't in business, like they're successful in their own careers, but they're not a business owner. And they've all changed as well. We've all grown, and luckily we've all grown together. And
Mhm.
so but some haven't, you know what I mean? And it
Yeah.
was just so
Yeah.
interesting to be like, well, yeah, I'm not 18 anymore. I hope I'm not the same as when I was 18. Like, please, that's terrifying, you know? So I'm glad you mentioned that, because it's can feel really lonely. It can feel like, am I making the right choice? You know, and it's that old quote, like, whoever you are the sum of the five people that you hang out around, you know, and it's like, you start to question what conversations you're having on a regular basis. How are you spending your time? All of that, you know?
100%. And you're completely right. I think she was coming from a place of like almost fear of losing me as a friend, because
Mm-hmm.
we used to hang out all the time. And now
Mm-hmm.
instead of hanging out all the time, I'm like, okay, well, instead of doing this workout class, I'm doing my Beachbody programs in my house. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to do them for 30 minutes, and then I'm going to work my business for an hour, and then we'll go, get wings or whatever. So
Yeah.
it definitely, there is if you're able to find those reasons and understand that for people, I think that can be really helpful while you're
Yeah.
going through that hurtful process. Um,
Totally.
but also, you get friends in the entrepreneurial space. Like, you
Oh
might not
yeah.
have them yet, but you will find your people.
Yeah.
I have made amazing friends and connections throughout the years with business, from going to events or, taking courses or masterminds or things like that. And just being really willing to put myself out there and make those connections. And you never
Mm-hmm.
know where those connections are going to lead, or when you're going to meet
Yeah.
those people in person too. And so I think that's really important, to get yourself in that room, to find that community of
Yeah.
those five people, that you want to
Mm-hmm.
be around, because you get to pick that ultimately
Yeah.
at the
Yeah.
end of the day. And you don't have to hang out with anyone you don't want to hang out with.
Exactly. And I think the older you get, I don't know, it was like once I turned 30, I was just like, I don't want to waste time. Like, I don't want to
Yes.
waste time, you know? And there really is something that like flips, I feel like, when you turn 30, and I'm 35 now. And so I feel like it's just gotten more intensified as I've gotten older.
Yeah.
And I think something too that you hit on that just like sparked for me is I value different types of friendships. So it's
Yeah.
like, I'll have my entrepreneurial friends, and I can go to them to talk about business and, the stressors of it, and feel just like not alone in that. It can be a very isolating space, especially when you're on a computer all day. But then I have my friends who support me, but don't like get it. So we don't really talk about business, and I don't really want to talk about business with them. I want to talk about anything else but business, and it's like actually refreshing to have that. But I know there's not this like underlying, like, I'm going to make fun of what she does, or, there's none of that, right? There's
Right.
support, but we don't have to talk about it. And so I've kind of like, as I've gotten older, I've really leaned into valuing these different friendships for different parts of your personality and different parts of your life. I'm wondering if you've experienced that too.
Yeah, 100%. When you were saying that, I was like, oh yes, like compartmentalizing the different things. And I think
Yeah.
also that was maybe a little bit of the mistake that I had with her, was I was
Mm-hmm.
trying to talk to her about the business and all the stuff that
Mm-hmm.
she didn't understand, because I didn't have that business community yet.
Totally. Yeah.
And then
You're
it's
excited.
yeah, yeah.
You
And
want to tell everyone.
I didn't know, I didn't know better, but I have since learned, like you mentioned, like my college friends, they might ask me about my business and be like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. They have no idea. Like, they don't
Yeah.
understand. Right. Um,
Yeah.
so I know that when I, go to, like I said, conferences or whatever, different kinds of meetups that are local for women in business, that's going to be my time to like get that business talk out of my system. And
Yeah.
then when I meet up with, my sister and our friends from high school, like, we don't necessarily have to spend that time to do that. So 100%,
Yeah.
like, I definitely recommend finding those different compartments of your life that you're able to
Totally.
get that energy out, for sure.
Yeah, it's where you can go to people for. I love that you say that, because I definitely made that mistake as well in the beginning, because you're just so excited. You want to tell everyone and anyone about it, especially in network marketing, because they encourage you, at least most companies used to. I haven't been new to it in years, so I'm not sure what it's like now,
I still
but
do.
it was like, make a list of all your friends and family and message everyone and ask them to be on your team and buy your product. Right. So it's like, I totally get why they're like, what? It's like a very kind of approach. And so it's hard in the beginning, because you are excited and you're like, they care about me, so they should care about this. And it's like, when I actually think about it, I don't like ask them about their job a ton. I'm not that interested in what they're doing. You know what I mean? Like I am, but it's not like my passion. I don't really get it, you know? And then there's those rare friendships. I actually have one in particular that we met through theater, and then we did business together, but then we're also just best friends outside of business. And it's like a very rare unicorn friendship where we can be like, we're talking just business now, we're talking just this, but we get all sides. I don't think those are common. I really only can think of one person that I have in my life who encapsulates all of it, but it's almost like, I heard Esther Perel talks about this a lot in relationships. And it's like, you can't expect your spouse, your partner, your romantic partner to be everything to you. And a lot of people do. They're like, they're going to be my lover. They're going to be my best friend. They're going to be my therapist. They're going to be my business partner. It's like, whoa. Like they can't play all of those roles, you know, they're one person. And so it's the same with friendships. You know, you go to your one friend for this one thing, the other friend for another. And it's not like you're being a different person. You're not like, I'm a completely different person, but you just have different aspects of your personality you're using with those different people. I love it. This kind of went in a different direction, but I love it. I think it was important.
No, it's totally important because it, like you said, when we started talking about this, it's not talked about enough, you know, and these are the reasons why, because, you know, we do expect people, you know, to do certain things, and then, you know, kind of reining back our expectations a little bit can be really freeing in those relationships.
Exactly.
And save them too, you know, you pick and choose when you have time to hang out with people or when you want to hang out with people. And having those people that can be those people, you know, your confidant, your guidance counselor, your whatever. I said guidance counselor. I'm this is my school talk.
Such a teacher. I love it. It's so true though, because this conversation is important because how you think people are perceiving you affects how you show up. Someone might be like not posting on social media fully, or kind of like diluting their message because they're nervous about what their friends will think, what their family will think. And I get that's a real fear, and there's some consequences in real life, but most of the time, I'm generalizing, but most of the time you're going to be fine and it's going to be okay. But we let that stop us. And I have seen people literally take off in their business once they stop letting that stop them, because they were like diluting their message. So it actually really does matter. It actually affects your bottom line in business a lot.
Well, and I think it's because it affects your confidence. Cause I remember when I, you know, was going through all that with my friends, and I'm like, should I be, you know, you're questioning everything. Like, why am I in this company? Is she right? Are these products bad? You know, if my best friend won't support me, then who's going to support me? Why am I posting? You know, and it's just all these questions that we're over analyzing. And I realized, and my mom actually might've said this on the phone, but like, you've got to be your biggest cheerleader, you know, like when we talk about our health, you know, you have to be your biggest advocate for that. You know, you have to let your doctor know and trust your gut and all that stuff. When we really hone into that, I feel like in the health field, or at least I try to be really conscious of that. I'm like, why not be the same for your business? Like, be your biggest cheerleader, show up. And it's like those blinders on and people are going to talk about you. And that's what I realized, whether you're doing good or you're doing bad. So I would rather them talk about me for my success.
Of course.
Than being like, well, we started something and she's failing and now we're going to talk about it. So I'm like, I'm just going to show them. And that, when I had that shift of like, and it's not that I didn't care, you know, because those things were still, you know, were painful or hurtful or whatever, but it's just like, you know, they're not going to affect my outcome, my success, you know, the way I'm helping other people, because I know I am making a difference. So, oh, well.
I love that. I think that's so huge. And it's, you hit the nail on the head. It's really about confidence, and gosh, that makes such a difference in how people are going to really say yes to working with you. If you're not confident, they're going to be like, why would they buy into what you're selling if you're not confident? So it's so huge. So we mentioned your podcast. Where can people listen to your podcast? Tell us about your podcast, the name, what it's like, who it's for, what you guys talk about.
Awesome. Yeah. So my podcast is the Purpose and Pixie Dust podcast. It was formerly the Social Selling Sisterhood. That was back when I was really mainly talking to women in network marketing, direct sales. And then I have since pivoted. I still have a lot of clients in that field, but I also help, you know, tutors and women with their own businesses online, occupational therapy. You know, it has just branched out a lot, which I really love. I love that aspect because it's always, you know, keeping me on my toes and making sure that what I'm teaching, is applicable across many fields, or if not all fields. So yeah, it's a business strategy sort of podcast where I also interview lots of guests who share their experiences, very similar to what you're doing here, share their journey, what's come up for them in their entrepreneurial space. What can they share and teach other people about that as well. And then it's got a little bit of a fun Disney vibe to it with pixie dust to help women not get burnout, because, that burnout, like we mentioned earlier, is so real. And I think it really holds back so many people. Like, you're just on the cusp. I don't know if you've seen that like image on social media before, where like success is like just on the other side of this wall that they're like digging and digging and digging, and they're almost there. They would have kept going, and I feel like that burnout is that wall for so many people. And so it's my mission to help women, really be able to have that success in their business while working full time or being a full-time mom or whatever it is. So that's
I love that.
And it's available everywhere.
I love that. I love the name. It's so fun. It's so fun. And it seems very on brand for you. So that's awesome. Amazing. And where else can people connect with you?
So I'm Lindsay Dollinger pretty much everywhere. So I think I'm the only one. Lindsay and then Dollinger. So you can find me on Instagram, Facebook. The podcast has a free Facebook community as well that's always linked up there with the same name. And I also do a lot of my, I repurpose, and that was actually another tip for being able to do it all, is repurposing a lot, which I know when I talked about right before we started recording. But I also repurpose a lot of my podcast episodes over on YouTube. So you can find me by searching there as well.
I love it. Yes. Big fan of repurposing over here. 100%. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Lindsay. This has been such a insightful episode. I think a perspective that we really needed. Thanks for being honest and vulnerable and talking about the uncomfortable, awkward at times, because everyone experiences them. It's just not everyone shows them. So, really appreciate you. Everyone go follow Lindsay, tag us on social media. Let us know how you like this episode. Go tell her how you like this episode. I'm sure you love a good DM that's telling you how you liked it. And make sure you go follow Lindsay and just see what else she's doing and listen to the podcast. We'll put all of that in the show notes for you. Thanks so much for being on. This was awesome.
Thank you, Megan. This was like a dream come true. So thank you so much.
That makes me so happy. I love it. I love it. All right, guys, we will see you in the next episode.